I felt his fingers trace along my thigh under the table, a touch so familiar yet forbidden now. The coffee shop was nearly empty, just us and the soft hum of late-evening conversations. Valentine's eyes held mine across the small table, that same intensity I remembered from years ago. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered, but I didn't pull away. His thumb brushed against my skin, sending warmth spiraling through me. "Neither should you," he murmured back, "but here we are." The wedding ring on my finger felt heavier suddenly, a reminder of everything this moment could destroy. But when he leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear, all those reasons seemed to fade into nothing. Loved that opening? Hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what caught your attention most. Your support means everything. 3 years. That's how long it had been since Valentine and I ended things, since I chose safety over the wildfire we created together. Now here I sat, supposedly meeting a client about a marketing campaign, but knowing full well I'd come here hoping to see him. The text had been simple. Cafe Luna, 9 p.m., need to discuss the Henderson account. But Valentine never worked the Henderson account. We both knew this wasn't about business. The moment he walked through that door, everything came flooding back. The way he moved with quiet confidence, how his presence seemed to fill any room he entered. He wore a charcoal suit that hugged his frame perfectly, his dark hair slightly tousled like he'd been running his hands through it. When our eyes met, that familiar spark ignited between us. The same electricity that had always made it impossible to think clearly around him. "Clementine," he said simply, sliding into the seat across from me. My name on his lips sounded different, now weighted with everything we'd left unsaid. "This is dangerous," I managed, my voice barely steady. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my coffee cup, needing something to occupy them before they betrayed me completely. "Probably," he agreed, his gaze never leaving mine. "But when has that ever stopped us?" The memories hit like waves. Late nights in his apartment, the way he'd pull me close against him, how we'd move together in perfect rhythm until the world outside ceased to exist. The heat between us had always been consuming, addictive. Even now, just sitting across from him, I could feel that familiar ache building deep inside me. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, and the sincerity in his voice made my chest tighten. "Marriage suits you." The mention of my husband felt like cold water, but Valentine's fingers found mine across the table, intertwining with a familiarity that made my breath catch. "Don't," I whispered, but I didn't pull away. I couldn't. "Don't what?" His thumb traced small circles on my palm, the same gesture that used to drive me wild. "Don't tell you the truth? Don't touch you? Don't feel what I've felt every day since you walked away?" The cafe around us seemed to fade, leaving just this bubble of tension and longing. Other patrons became background noise, their conversations blending into meaningless murmur. All I could focus on was the warmth of his touch, the way his eyes seemed to see straight through me. "I made my choice," I said, though the words felt hollow even to me. "Did you?" He leaned closer, his voice dropping to that low, intimate tone that used to unravel me completely. "Or did you choose what you thought you should want instead of what you actually wanted?" His question hung between us, heavy with implication. Because the truth was, my marriage felt safe, predictable, comfortable in all the ways my relationship with Valentine never had been. With my husband, I knew exactly what each day would bring. With Valentine, every moment had been an adventure, every touch electric, every kiss like drowning in fire. "Tell me you're happy," he said, his fingers tightening around mine. "Tell me you don't think about us, about how we were together. Tell me you don't miss the way I made you feel." I opened my mouth to lie, to say exactly what I should say, but the words wouldn't come. Because I did miss it. I missed the way he'd look at me like I was the only woman in the world. I missed how he'd touch me with such focused intensity that everything else disappeared. I missed feeling truly alive in someone's arms. "Clementine." The way he said my name was almost a plea. "I never got over you. 3 years and I've tried everything, everyone, but nothing comes close. No one makes me feel what you do." My resolve was crumbling with each word. The careful walls I'd built around my heart were developing cracks, and Valentine had always been expert at finding those vulnerable spots. "We can't," I said, but even I could hear how weak my protest sounded. "Can't what?" His free hand moved, to rest on my thigh, just above the knee, his touch burning through the fabric of my dress. "Can't feel what we're feeling? Can't want what we want? Because that's already happening, whether we act on it or not." He was right, and we both knew it. The desire crackling between us was undeniable, had been from the moment he walked in. My body was already responding to his proximity, that familiar warmth spreading through me, making it hard to think about anything but how it felt to be close to him. "One night," he said softly, his hand sliding slightly higher on my thigh. Just one night to remember what we had, what we could have again. I should have said no, should have pulled away, gone home to my safe, predictable life. But when Valentine looked at me with those dark eyes full of longing and promise, when his fingers traced patterns on my skin that awakened every nerve ending, rational thought became impossible. Where? The word escaped before I could stop it, and I saw the flash of triumph in his eyes. The Meridian Hotel. Room 1247. He'd already planned this, already hoped I'd say yes. The confidence in his voice told me he'd never doubted I would. 20 minutes later, I stood outside that hotel room door, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it through the wood. My hands shook as I raised them to knock, but the door opened before I could. Valentine stood there in just his dress shirt and pants, the jacket and tie discarded. The top few buttons of his shirt were undone, revealing the strong column of his throat, the hint of chest I remembered so well. His hair was more disheveled now, and his eyes held a hunger that made my knees weak. "You came," he said, and there was something almost vulnerable in his voice. "I came," I confirmed, stepping into the room. The door closed behind me with a soft click that felt like sealing our fate. The hotel room was elegant but understated, dominated by a king-sized bed that seemed to take up all the available air. City lights twinkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting everything in a romantic glow that made this feel like a dream. "Are you sure about this?" Valentine asked, though he was already moving closer, drawn to me like gravity. Instead of answering with words, I reached up and finished, unbuttoning his shirt, my fingers remembering the feel of his skin, the way his muscles tensed under my touch. He inhaled sharply when my palms flattened against his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart that matched my own. "I've missed this," I whispered, letting my hands explore the familiar terrain of his torso. He was still as solid as I remembered, still carried himself with that quiet strength that had always attracted me. His hands found my waist, pulling me closer until barely an inch separated us. "I've missed you," he corrected, his voice rough with need. "Every damn day." When his lips finally met mine, it was like coming home and jumping off a cliff simultaneously. The kiss was everything I remembered and more, demanding, consuming, full of 3 years of pent-up longing. His mouth moved against mine with practiced familiarity, knowing exactly how to make me melt against him. My arms wound around his neck, fingers tangling in his hair as I pressed closer. He tasted like coffee and possibility, like every risk I'd ever been too scared to take. His hands roamed my back, relearning my curves through the thin fabric of my dress. "Too many clothes," he murmured against my lips, and I couldn't disagree. His fingers found the zipper at the back of my dress, sliding it down with agonizing slowness. The fabric pooled at my feet, leaving me standing before him in just my undergarments and heels. His eyes traveled over me with an appreciation that made me feel beautiful, desired, alive in a way I'd almost forgotten. "Perfect," he breathed, his hands skimming over my shoulders, down my arms. "You're still perfect." I helped him out of his remaining clothes, my hands shaking slightly with anticipation. When we were both finally free of barriers, he pulled me against him, skin to skin, and the sensation was electric. Every point of contact sent sparks through my nervous system. He lifted me easily, carrying me to the bed where he laid me down, with reverent care. For a moment he just looked at me, his gaze intense and full of emotion. "I love you," he said quietly, the words hanging in the air between us. "I never stopped loving you." The admission hit me like a physical blow, because I felt it too, had always felt it, even when I tried to convince myself otherwise. "Valentine, you don't have to say it back," he said, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. "I just needed you to know, but I did feel it. Love, want, need, all of it crashed over me as he began to kiss his way down my body. His mouth was warm and sure, reacquainting itself with every sensitive spot that drove me wild. When he reached the curve where my neck met my shoulder, I gasped, my back arching involuntarily. "Still sensitive there," he murmured with satisfaction, his tongue tracing the spot that made me shiver. His hands were everywhere, touching, caressing, awakening responses I'd thought were dormant. When his fingers traced along my inner thigh, I trembled, anticipation building to almost unbearable levels. "Please," I whispered, not even sure what I was asking for, just knowing I needed more. He understood. He always had. His touch became more focused, more intentional, finding the rhythm that had always driven me to the edge of reason. My breathing grew uneven as warmth spiraled through me, building towards something inevitable and overwhelming. "Let go," he encouraged, softly. "I've got you." And I did let go, my body responding to his touch with an intensity that left me breathless and shaking. He held me through it, whispering soft reassurances as waves of pleasure washed over me. When I finally caught my breath, He was watching me with such tenderness that my chest ached. "Beautiful," he said simply. I pulled him down to me, needing to taste him again, to feel the weight of him against me. Our bodies fit together like they always had, like they were made for this, for each other. When he finally joined with me, moving slowly at first, then with increasing urgency, it felt like coming alive again. We moved together in perfect synchronization, a dance we'd never forgotten, despite the years apart. Every thrust sent pleasure spiraling through me, building toward another peak that left me clinging to him, his name a prayer on my lips. He followed soon after, his body tensing against mine as he found his own release, my name torn from his throat like a sacred word. Afterward, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, listening to the gradually slowing rhythm of his heartbeat. His fingers combed through my hair with gentle strokes that made me want to purr like a contented cat. "Stay," he said quietly into the darkness. "I can't," I replied, though everything in me wanted to. "You know I can't." "Leave him." The words were spoken so softly I almost missed them. "Leave him and come back to me. We could have this every night, not just stolen moments." The temptation in his offer was almost overwhelming. To wake up in his arms every morning, to feel this alive and wanted and cherished every day. It was everything I'd given up, everything I'd convinced myself I didn't need. "It's not that simple," I said, though my heart was racing at the possibility. "It could be." His arms tightened around me. "I have money now, stability. I could give you everything you wanted before, but that wasn't why I'd left, and we both knew it. I'd left because loving Valentine felt like standing in a hurricane, exhilarating but dangerous, beautiful but potentially destructive. With him, I lost myself completely, became someone I didn't always recognize. "I need time to think," I said finally. "How much time?" There was an edge to his voice now, a desperation I'd never heard before. "I don't know." I sat up, reaching for my dress. The spell was breaking, reality creeping back in. It was incredible, but I married Valentine. I can't just walk away from that without thinking it through. He sat up too, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "You're going back to him. Right now, you're going to go back to him and pretend this never happened. What else can I do?" I turned to face him, and the pain in his eyes made my chest tight. "I made vows. I have responsibilities. You have a life," he countered. "A real life, with real passion and real love. Don't throw that away for some idea of what you think you should do." I finished dressing in silence, his words echoing in my head. When I was ready to leave, he was still sitting on the edge of the bed, looking defeated in a way that broke my heart. "This isn't over," he said as I moved toward the door. "What we have, what we feel for each other, it's too strong to just ignore." I paused with my hand on the doorknob. Maybe that's exactly why it has to be over. The taxi ride home passed in a blur of city lights and internal turmoil. By the time I slipped quietly into my own bedroom, my husband was already asleep, snoring softly on his side of the bed. I stood there in the darkness, looking at him, trying to feel something, guilt, affection, even regret for what I'd done. But all I felt was empty. I went through the motions of my nightly routine, washing away the evidence of my evening, but I couldn't wash away the memory of Valentine's touch, the way he'd looked at me like I was everything he'd ever wanted. The next few days passed in a haze of normalcy that felt anything but normal. I went to work, came home, had dinner with my husband, watched television, went to bed. But underneath it all, I felt like I was sleepwalking through someone else's life. Valentine texted me 3 times, simple messages. "Thinking of you. Can't stop remembering last night. When can I see you again?" I didn't respond to any of them, but I didn't delete them either. They sat in my phone like small bombs, ready to explode my carefully ordered world if I let them. On Friday evening, my husband announced he was going out of town for a business conference, leaving early Saturday morning and returning Sunday night. The opportunity hung between us like ripe fruit, tempting and dangerous. I made it until Saturday afternoon before I broke down and called Valentine. "Hello, beautiful," he answered on the first ring, and just hearing his voice made my knees weak. "Michael's out of town," I said without preamble. "I'll pick you up in 20 minutes. This time, he took me to his apartment, the same one I'd spent so many nights in years ago. It looked different now, more expensive furniture, better artwork, but it still smelled like him, still felt like the place where I'd been happiest. "I've been going crazy," he said, the moment the door closed behind us. 3 days without hearing from you felt like 3 years. "I've been thinking," I said, though thinking was probably too generous a term for the obsessive spiral my mind had been caught in. "And?" He moved closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, and I don't know what to do. The admission felt like a weight lifting from my chest. Everything in my life tells me to stay away from you, but everything in my heart says the opposite. Then listen to your heart. His hands framed my face, thumbs stroking over my cheekbones. When has it ever led you wrong? Before I could answer, he was kissing me again, and all my careful reasoning dissolved. This kiss was different from the ones at the hotel. Hungrier, more desperate, full of days of pent-up need. I melted into him, my body remembering exactly how perfectly we fit together. This time, we didn't make it to the bedroom. He lifted me onto the kitchen counter, my legs wrapping around his waist as he settled between them. His mouth trailed fire down my throat while his hands worked at my clothes with urgent efficiency. "I need you," he said against my skin, and the raw need in his voice sent shivers through me. "Then take me," I replied, surprising myself with my boldness. What followed was intense and passionate, driven by days of denial and years of separation. We moved together with an urgency that bordered on desperate, as if we were trying to make up for all the time we'd lost. Afterward, we lay on his couch, my head pillowed on his chest, both of us breathing hard. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my bare shoulder, and I felt more at peace than I had in months. "I want to see you again," he said eventually. "Not just stolen moments like this. Real dates, real time together." Valentine. "I know you're scared," he continued before I could protest. "I know this complicates everything. But we can't keep pretending this isn't real, that what we have doesn't matter." He was right, but that didn't make the situation any less impossible. "What are you suggesting? That I become your mistress? Sneak around? Lie to everyone?" "I'm suggesting you choose happiness," he said firmly. "I'm suggesting you choose love. Everything else we can figure out." The simplicity of his proposal was both appealing and terrifying. To just choose love, consequences be damned. It was so typically Valentine, bold, passionate, willing to risk everything for what he wanted. "I need more time," I said, though I could hear how weak the excuse sounded. "How much more time?" His voice carried a note of frustration. "How long are you going to keep punishing us both for wanting each other?" "It's not that simple," I protested, sitting up and reaching for my clothes. "It is that simple," he countered, catching my wrist. "You love me. I love you. The rest is just fear." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was letting fear make my decisions, choosing safety over happiness, security over passion. But the fear felt rational, justified. Loving Valentine meant giving up control, meant letting emotion drive decisions that logic should make. "Promise me something," he said as I finished dressing. "What?" "Promise me you'll stop running from this, from us. We both know this isn't going away no matter how hard you try to ignore it." I looked at him, sitting there shirtless and beautiful and completely unguarded, and felt my resolve wavering again. "I promise I'll think about it, really think about it. That's all I ask." But as I left his apartment and drove home through the evening traffic, I wondered if thinking was the problem. Maybe some decisions couldn't be made with logic and careful consideration. Maybe some choices could only be made with the heart, regardless of the risk. My phone buzzed with a text from my husband. "Conference going well. Miss you. See you tomorrow night." The mundane normalcy of the message felt like a slap. This was my real life, I reminded myself. This predictable, safe, comfortable existence. Valentine was a beautiful dream, a passionate interlude, but dreams didn't pay mortgages or build stable futures. But as I pulled into my driveway and looked at the house I shared with my husband, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking back into a prison of my own making. A comfortable prison, perhaps, but a prison nonetheless. Sunday passed slowly, filled with household chores and the kind of domestic routine that had once felt comforting but now felt suffocating. Every mundane task reminded me of the choice I was facing, this safe, predictable life or the uncertainty and passion that Valentine offered. When my husband returned that evening, full of stories from his conference and plans for upcoming projects, I found myself studying him like a stranger. He was a good man, kind, responsible, faithful. He didn't deserve to be deceived, didn't deserve to have his wife fantasizing about another man while sitting across from him at dinner. "You're quiet tonight," he observed as we cleared the dishes. "Everything okay?" "Just tired," I lied, forcing a smile. "How was the conference?" He launched into a detailed recap of presentations and networking opportunities, and I nodded in all the right places while my mind drifted to Valentine's hands on my skin, the way he'd whispered my name like a prayer. That night, as my husband reached for me in bed, I closed my eyes and tried to feel something, anything beyond obligation. His touch was gentle, familiar, but it didn't set me on fire the way Valentine's did. When it was over and he fell asleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if this was what the rest of my life would look like, going through the motions while my heart yearned for something more. Monday morning brought another text from Valentine. "Still thinking of you. When you're ready to stop thinking and start living, you know where to find me." I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it, but the words stayed with me throughout the day. when you're ready to stop thinking and start living. Was that what I'd been doing? Existing instead of living? Playing it safe instead of following my heart? By Tuesday, I'd made my decision. Not the logical one, not the safe one, but the one that felt right in the deepest part of my soul. I called Valentine from my office, my hands shaking as I dialed his number. "I was starting to think you'd decided to be noble," he said by way of greeting. "Maybe I'm tired of being noble," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. "Maybe I'm ready to be happy instead." The silence on the other end stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. Then, "Are you sure? Because once we do this, really do this, there's no going back." "I'm sure," I said, and for the first time in days I felt like I could breathe properly. "Come over after work. We'll figure out the details together." That evening, as I drove to Valentine's apartment, I felt simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. I was about to blow up my entire life for a man who might break my heart, about to choose passion over security, love over logic. But as I pulled into his parking lot and saw him waiting for me by the entrance, that familiar smile lighting up his face, I knew I'd made the right choice. Some risks were worth taking. Some loves were worth fighting for, and sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the truest one. What would you have done in my position? Would you have chosen safety or followed your heart, no matter the cost? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one and want to know your thoughts. Before you go, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that push boundaries. Turn on notifications so you never miss when things get intense. Thanks for being here with me on this journey.